Did you watch a lot of TV when you were a kid?
Actually, no.
No?
No. We have vastly different childhood television experiences.
My dad wanted every single possible channel at all times in like every room of the house if he could.
Until high school, there was one TV in our house.
How many channels?
Well, we didn't have cable till after we... Yeah, that was like 5.
Oh wow. I mean that's probably healthier. That's much healthier. I know that's healthier.
That's
Really?
the assumption, but...
Do you disagree?
Well, the thing is like, I was already going to be a socially awkward child, so not being involved in the media that all of the other children were talking about didn't help that. And also my mother, specifically, was very controlling about the television up until teenage years, when we got cable and TVs in other rooms. I was allowed to watch PBS and Star Trek.
I like Star Trek. I like PBS.
I still love Star Trek.
Yeah.
But, like, I did not have a good, like, social
Oh no.
idea of how, like, social interaction went from media.
Oh, probably not. And that would just have been next gen, right?
Yeah, that was mostly next gen.
See, my family had like VHSs of the original series, and then I'd also have next gen. We had a lot of tapes. We had a wall of just tapes.
There was a cabinet in the house that was full of VHS tapes.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, not... There was, like, children's media, like the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle VHS tapes.
And, like, the big, clunky
and the
plastic.
big Disney clamshells.
Yeah.
And then just a whole bunch of, like, you know, period movies that my mother was into. And that was kind of it.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, no. Watched a lot of Universal horror movies with my dad. I've talked about that before. I could watch whatever I wanted. There were very few things that were off limits, but at the same time, should have been.
So, you know that I have a love for the Universal horror movies, but I
Yeah.
actually didn't watch them until we got together, because my experience with them was the bright orange books in my elementary school library.
The actual
because
books.
I was always going to be a weird child. Like, remember when they used to have the video stores in the
Yeah.
grocery stores?
Oh, yeah.
And I would just gravitate right to horror. I'd be standing at the cases for, like, Gremlins and Murder Dolls and, you know, all the little stabby things, apparently, because Critters was another big one. Like, all the fun little box art of horror movies, like, even as a child, I was entranced with them,
Yeah.
was not allowed to watch those.
I miss Blockbuster. I'm gonna say that. I miss going down aisles and just getting random things, not necessarily in a language I spoke. Those were good times.
The
But
Netflix experience isn't the same.
It's not the same. But, yeah, no, my dad really loved television. And I wound up with that love as well, because we'd have, like, the TV in the living room, the family TV. And then when that one got, I guess, old? It wasn't broken, it was just old? Or we got a bigger TV there. Then that TV would go to my parents' bedroom. And whatever TV they had would go to my sister's bedroom. And her TV would become my TV. So it was, you know, largest to smallest. And, yeah, as a result, I had a television that had, like, rabbit ears. You know, an antenna for a while. I would get stations that... Like, I had a tennis game in a language I didn't speak. And I'm not even sure how I got that. But I don't know. I used that antenna to get to something.
That technology was amazingly esoteric.
Yeah, and then the TV after that I kind of fell in love with. I became very, very attached to this inanimate object.
Yeah.
I had a very unhealthy relationship with television, I realize. But that television, the second one, it was, you know, they were the tube TVs. They were big, clunky, heavy TVs with the tube. And I loved my TV so much that when it finally died, I cried about it like it was a friend. And so they replaced the tube. They actually repaired this television. It was probably
no one
so
did that.
expensive. It was such an expensive thing to do for their weird child
There
who
was like
became so attached.
There was probably like a 2-year period where that was like cost effective.
I don't think this was in that period.
No.
My dad still talks about it. Just
As
like,
soon as
"Why?"
Taiwan started making electronics, it's just like, just throw out the TV. Like,
Yeah, they could have just bought me a new TV. They wanted to. My dad was just like, just please, just take a new TV.
this wasn't technically my TV, but my roommate in New York City, his parents upgraded their TV, and we got their old TV. Now, their old TV was one of the projector TVs.
Oh, wow.
Where, like, the actual, like, light mechanism is small, but then they bounce it through some mirrors and onto the front screen to make it big, but without having to, like, have a large tube. Which was, like, great, except that thing weighed 120 pounds, and it was literally bigger than you.
Oh, no.
It was 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide.
Oh, no.
And when we lived in apartments, we always lived on the second floor. So moving
go up the stairs with that thing.
Yeah. So it was fun to play Halo on, but it was not fun to move. And like as we lived together, TVs became flat screen and large and cheap. And then when it broke, it was just like we did that white trash thing where we just kind of put a TV in front of it or on top of it and just used this.
And now it's a table.
Yeah. Because it was a sturdy piece of furniture. That thing was real wood. That was pre-particle board.
Yeah.
So the construction of that, it was solid.
It's the kind of thing that you would, like, hollow out to turn into, like, a litter box or something. Like a cat bed.
It could be a really fun fish tank if it was a tube. Like, it didn't have that kind of screen on it where it had that fun, like, concave. It didn't have one of those. It was flat because it was project.
Yeah. Things used to be designed differently. And I recognize it wasn't more efficient. But, like, I miss the round computers, like the iMac, the iFruit.
Everything's become so, like, standardized. Like, we talked about this before, like, you know, you used to be able to get yellow and orange cars.
Yeah,
and,
now it's just white.
You know, it's just white and black and some gray, and just parking lots are just, like, monochromatic. The rise of the sad beige world that we're creating for ourselves.
It's just unhealthy for kids. Let's talk about the fact that we have the flat screens. When we're talking about televisions, fine. But also computers are all the flat screens because they're basically just TVs. There's no difference between two. And that I hate because I used to, like, decorate my computer. You know, I'd put, like, clay horns on it and, like, and now there's nothing, there's no space.
You were so sad when we had to upgrade your stuff and it didn't have room for the horns.
Yeah, because now it's just square and flat. So,
As a boring person, I enjoy squares, but, like, there has to be some variety in the squares.
I think that's why I got so attached to tube TV, because at that point there was no such thing.
Yeah. And you had a TV in your room, like, basically the entire time growing up.
Yes, which I think explains a lot. For anyone in the audience who has ever seen the movie Cable Guy, starring Jim Carrey, not the comedy you might think, given the cast.
It was advertised as such because of his career at the time.
But it shouldn't have been. Also had a very young Jack Black. But, I wound up a hair away from becoming that guy. Because everything came out of my mouth was like a Happy Days quote or Star Trek. Like, I was that weirdo. So you had the problem of not knowing anything that was hip going on. I had the problem of knowing stuff from my parents' generation really, really well.
I have never been cool, and I will never be cool. We talked today, like I was in the dentist office, and they were playing Top 40 radio, and I recognized one song in the hour I was there.
Yeah.
Because I am not down with the kids.
No, I was never. You know, I remember all my friends being really into all the different boy bands, and I couldn't tell any of them apart, and I just wanted to listen to Meatloaf.
Got really into nu metal.
You know, we're weirdos, but...
Yeah. Besides that, it was Beatles and Boston were the big parental influence bands that...
A lot of Beatles, yeah. Unlike Traveling Wilburys, which has a Beatle. But, yeah, no, I feel you.
So...
But, yeah.
Very different media experiences. Like, kids would come in, they'd reference, like... Well, also, like, we grew up in the era of just, like, I remember clearly, like, second grade... Terminator 2 toys were all the rage.
Yeah.
And that was an R-rated movie that second graders, I don't think were watching.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I saw Jaws, I was hiding behind the couch because it was after bedtime, but I wasn't tired.
See, I never had to hide, but at the same time, yeah, no, our generation had toys for things that were not things we should have been seeing.
Yeah.
Ever.
RoboCop had a toy line. And it's like, what child are you letting watch RoboCop?
Me.
You were the target demographic of RoboCop.
I was the target demographic. Oh no. And, you know, in the Universal Horror, like, Universal Horror films, fine. Hammer, not so much.
Hammer's less for kids, yeah.
Yeah, and my dad didn't necessarily have a line. It was, oh, you like the other Dracula. have the one with blood.
Scream, Dracula, Scream. It's the same thing.
Yeah. But if even in my child brain, I was like, there is a difference.
Also, blood shouldn't be that color.
No. No.
Something's wrong with the TV.
Plus, there are also movies that I don't think should have been traumatizing, though I'm learning recently there were things that scared the crap out of me that apparently scared everybody. Like, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, yeah, the bus driver.
Yeah.
It's referenced constantly, yeah.
She's terrifying. She gave me nightmares.
So, just because we're talking about TV and media and all that, and how I was a kid who, like, gravitated towards horror, I wasn't allowed to watch that at home. My grandparents didn't know that. I convinced them that I was allowed to watch things like Child Play and made them rent those movies for me, and then had so many nightmares.
Yep. Now, I wound up finding Universal horror films really comforting, because whenever I had a nightmare unrelated to the movies, I'd go downstairs, Dad was watching them, and he'd just be like, alright, let's watch this together. And then I'd fall asleep on the couch, and he'd take me back to my bed and be like, you're done.
Yeah.
You're unconscious. But, yeah, no, really, I wouldn't say obsessed with television, but I was real into TV, to the point where, like, when your kid thinks the TV is their friend, that is so sad. That is so very, very sad.
Yeah. Well, I was just absent from media. I was very much like being locked outdoors till sunset kid. But yeah, it was one of those rules that just like my friends had cable and TVs throughout their households and watched movies, and just like I wasn't allowed to have gun-shaped toys.
Oh, I was the trouble friend. I had a couple friends, well, I had one friend really, who wasn't allowed to be my friend anymore because my house had candy.
Oh.
That was the other thing that I definitely
Processed
have inherited
sugar.
from my father, is this sweet tooth. We always had candy on.
I hadn't noticed.
Oh, stop that. But yeah, no, candy and TV, we were the fun house. Apparently.
Fill you with sugar, show you Hammer horror films, go home.
Yeah, don't tell your mom.
No, I was the first child, and my mom was very into being like a good parent, and it just came like it was very controlling. Like I'm not gonna say she didn't do a bad job. I'm alive.
Yeah, it came out okay.
Yeah, turned out fine, but weird. But I was always gonna be weird in some way. It
Yeah.
just some of my weird comes from those early years of. And then, like, there was just a fast-forward button that got hit, because once we got cable, we got internet. And very soon after we got internet, we got high-speed internet. Like, it was all, like, within, like, 3 years' time, we suddenly had multiple computers and multiple TVs out of nowhere from having nothing.
I only really remember the one computer when I was a kid. We had the family computer. But I also remember, dial-up. You couldn't use the phone when someone was on the internet. That was a thing. I remember that real, real well.
I used to get in trouble for that because I'd tie up the phone line playing Ultima Online for days. No one could call.
Yeah. But, technology moves fast. Now, at least. Really, in our generation is when it started to go fast.
I think once the internet hit, it was just impossible to not have media be a bigger influence in your life. So that just hit the fast forward button. I think it was the internet.
Yeah, I would say that. Because then you know what's around.
Yeah. Because then in high school, like I had my own computer, I had my own TV, I had my own DVD, I had my own like VHS player that turned into a DVD player.
I don't think I had my own computer in high school. I think my first computer was the laptop I took to college, I had something that I took to college.
Well, the way my family recycled computers was like, I just took the old computer and set it up with my stuff. And I got just enough into electronics to upgrade it to, like, make it not terrible.
I got a new computer for college. I know that. It was a Mac.
Did get in a fight. I was starting college, and my sister was still in high school. And this is in his house, my dad was getting a new computer. And he's just like, your sister gets the new computer. I'm like, why? And he's like, well, she says she wants it. I'm like, she goes on MySpace and downloads viruses thinking there's a new hot album, and then I have to fix it. So you can do whatever you want. It's your money. But if you buy her the new computer instead of buying me the computer when I'm trying to play 3D games and spending my own money on the electronics that go inside of it, I spent over $100 of part-time high school money to play Ultima 9, which was not a good investment. Because I bought a $60 game and I had to buy an $80 graphics card.
Yeah.
But all she did was put viruses on. So I was like, you can do this, but when it needs fixing, I'm not doing it. And like, I got
My first computer was running whatever you needed to play the first American McGee's Alice game. And that was a while ago. That was like 2000, wasn't it?
You had a Mac too?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, because getting that game meant that because they made the discs for the PC. Mm-hmm. Mac was not involved at all. So by the time I got an official copy for Mac from like the Mac store, it had disc 2 written on the only disc. Because it didn't need the 2 discs. It was just the one disc. Oh, this is just what this disc looks like. Disc 2.
Yeah.
And I spent a while confused as to where the first disc was.
It's not weird to have things that are weird numbers with Alice in Wonderland if you're going by the source material.
And it still had like the booklet and everything that I still have. But like, I'm aware that was the problem, was that it was made for the PC. And then when they went, oh, also Mac, I guess people have this computer.
Yeah.
It was such an afterthought, and it was disc 2.
That I remember in the 90s, like people with Macs, you could play Marathon, and there was like a version of Warcraft you could play, and that was it for games on the Mac.
Yeah, if you wanted to game, you were not having a Mac.
And then pre-iPad, Macs were like, we're the fun computer. I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? You can't play any games. What do you mean fun computer?
Yeah.
You can run Doom on a calculator, you can't run Doom on a Mac. What are you talking about fun computer?
And when I went to college, my first college was an art school, so they made me get the whole Adobe suite.
Oh, yeah.
Photoshop and Illustrator and all that.
Back when it was $80.
Back when you said graphic design, it was talking about typeface in relation to what, like, it was not talking about working on the computer. Mm. That's not what graphic design was. It was like product design, and there was a lot more to it.
Yeah.
And that's why it was, when I took my first graphic design course at that art school, and then it transferred to the other school later, it transferred as Intro to Computer Art, and I thought that was odd, because I had never used a computer that whole time in that class.
Move so fast. In high school, I remember I took a photography class, and then the next year I took a different photography class, but now we had digital cameras that took 3.5 floppy disks.
Yep. Okay, how about how they wanted me to take an extra semester in undergrad, because an animation course I took, halfway through the course, they said, actually, that's not a drawing course anymore. Now it's a digital art course, and you're not in the digital art, whatever. And I said, but I drew this whole thing by hand.
Yep.
And like, I argued it.
It moved too fast. Halfway through the term, they're just like, this is digital now. It's like, it's not, though. Shut up.
I got an A without doing the thing that you said, which means this wasn't a thing you said.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing?
We lived in that era where there was just that. I'm sure every era has that, though. Like, I'm sure, like, people who were born before cars and then lived with cars are just like, what the fuck happened to the world?
Where are the roads? I used to walk here.
They're just hitting people with these machines and no one cares.
And, like, it just seems like things like school stuff should get grandfathered in. Whatever it is, when you applied, if it's in the same year, should still count, because otherwise they're just screwing people out of getting their degree that year.
I want to agree, but I do remember listening to a history podcast about the way you used to be a doctor is your dad was a doctor and you called yourself doctor.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Well, but then there was a switch in like the early 1900s, just like you needed a degree to call yourself doctor. Yeah. And everyone who currently was a doctor raised your hand and they said, no, you can keep calling yourself doctor. This is a transitory period between when your doctor could have actually gone to medical school or his grandfather liked horses.
Yes, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I was already in the program. I had this one course I needed.
I'm saying there's two specific situations, but your statement covers both of them, and I'm just saying...
Pedantic.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, no.
You knew what you faired.
Yes.
So TVs.
TVs are now just computers anyway.
I haven't watched a TV in years. We just watch the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
call it TV.
When we had a roommate, I think we had cable, and then we realized that we never turned on cable.
No. And I still call it television. You know, it's TV shows. It's just more like independently produced TV shows.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. You know, it's a bunch of small businesses effectively.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
It's too bad their only avenue to greater media is through huge multimedia conglomerates. But yes, the creators themselves.
Or a lot of crowdfunding.
Yes.
There's a lot of crowdfunding, just like Patreon, which we have one of, by the way. The description under this video has the link.
What a lovely transition.
It wasn't. That was really clumsy, actually.
Yeah, that was a good segue. Leave a comment if Rowan did a good segue.
Subscribe to the Patreon.
Subscribe to the channel.
And rock on.
Rock on.